Time for the Tesla and the Palantir weekly update, and I'm going to actually include Coinbase again this week and maybe a few others just to show you what I'm really looking at for some certain stocks that are talked about a lot on X. So the first stock we're going to do is Tesla as usual, and I'm going to start off with the daily chart just because I'm going to show you slowly over a series of different charts why Tesla is looking more and more bullish. And starting with the daily chart, just using the Ichimoku cloud and the moving averages, my blue line there is the 100-day, the purple is the 200-day, the green is the 50-day moving average. So essentially, this closed above everything on Friday, right? Everything. It closed above the cloud, above the 50, above the 200, above the baseline, the conversion line, everything, right? So this is actually just on a day-to-day basis, this is breaking higher. So very, very bullish development. Then what we can do is just go to our linear scale fib here and look at the weekly chart for Tesla and take a look. You know, it's back above the 321.32, the 702 fib I've been showing you for a while. So this is also a very good confluence that it's a more bullish development. Then we can put on the weekly Ichimoku cloud here and just take a look that, you know what, even on the weekly chart, it got back inside the cloud from last week. It got back above my little conversion line there and the baseline there. So 320, 323.73. It's back above everything again with a nice little bullish candle. So it was a nice 5% week, and it was very, very silent because during the whole week, everybody was depressed about it and nobody wanted to really say or think Tesla was going to go higher. But I kept seeing signs that, you know what, this is going to start going higher. And sure enough, that's exactly the case. So based off just the daily chart here, looking like there's some clear skies, maybe up to the 350s, even on the weekly chart here inside the cloud, there's really no resistance until 347.48 again. So does this bode well for an earnings, like nice little pop? Possibly, right? Because it's kind of clear skies inside the cloud up to the 347, maybe even 350s up here. But this doesn't mean it's going to go straight up. It could just go back and back test some levels into the low 320s, maybe even into the 3 teens again as well. That's a possibility, but this is looking like a great development for building a new base now on top of this 320 zone and be able to go higher. And not only that, we can go back to our linear scale again and just take a look here at, just take off this indicators as well. We can see that if it did want to go up to the 347, it might even go back up towards the linear scale GAN level up here, which is around 358. I've been showing this chart for a long time as well. And when you just look at everything without any fibs or anything and just look at the GAN, just look at the symmetry, there's nothing bad about this chart at all, right? Especially since this 2023 bottom, what do you really see? Well, you see higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and we're working on making another higher high. Right, that's really what it's looking like. And once it can break back above this 358 again, it looks like it can go higher to the 45-degree angle right here, possibly, and maybe even to the arcs above into the 500s. It's very, very possible. And now it's time to show you the chart that I've been teasing you a little bit on X with right here. And this is my GAN fan. This is the downward sloping GAN fan. And I wanted to show you this specifically because I've showed this in the past, maybe many, many months ago, how I once said maybe back in 2024 in December, how maybe I don't need to use it anymore because it's breaking above the very last downward sloping angle. But since then, it did come back down to the symmetry of all these other angles here. And what is it doing now? It's actually trying to even break back above this red angle. And what is the significance of this red angle? Well, this one right here, the significance is it was the 2021-2022 top, right? That's the significance here. So every time it tried to go back up in 2021, it failed. And it ended up getting rejected right there back in April of 2022. And then it went down to the blue angle, which was the bottoming process angle, right? Every time it went down and touched that blue angle, it was trying to bottom. With the exception of this V bottom during the Twitter panic of Elon selling shares to buy Twitter, right? That was the exception down there. But it tried to gravitate towards this blue angle the whole time. But yeah, the importance of this angle that it's trying to break out, it was the top in 2021. So getting back above that is actually very, very bullish development. And when you combine that with everything else I just showed you with the daily chart, the Fibonacci, the cloud, the Ichimoku cloud, everything, there's so much confluence now that there is a possibility to go up. And if it does want to go break some of those levels, and especially that 358 zone I talked about, then the possibility to even go back up to the 400s is there. And once you can really flip this downward sloping angle right here, the 406 to a support, again, 405, 406, then we're talking about 500s, 600s, and above. So it's getting more and more bullish slowly but surely, and this is just a very sleeper of a candle here because nobody cared about it this week. Nobody at all. Everybody thought it's going back below 300, it's going to go crash. But this surprised me because all the indicators that I pay attention to, it closed above. And next is Palantir here, and Palantir, I want to just show you that my log scale fib almost got hit. The 1.618 log-based fib from the previous, we'll go back in time, from the previous 2021 high to the all-time low down here, almost got there, right? Almost got there. But did it get there? Did it touch it at all? No, it did not. So it still has potential to go up a little bit more to challenge this zone, right? If it can go up there to the 157.62 and challenge it and maybe try to flip it to a support, then that would be great. But it's not guaranteed to do that. This is a big zone. This 1.618 fib is a big zone. This could be a big resistance zone. So we're going to pay attention to it a lot. But what I want to pay attention to as a support is actually just on the linear scale. And this has potential to be a support now, the 147.31. Why? Because it's never actually closed above this 3.618 linear base fib ever, right? And in fact, this was the highest weekly candle close ever in the history. So it's a very, very bullish development. So if that 157 does get rejected, let's see if this 147.31 can hold. We can also combine the linear scale Ichimoku conversion line right there, which is right there around 137. So if it did want to get a little bit of liquidity below that 147 and go back to the 137, 138 zone, that is okay, right? That is perfectly okay for a potential breakout. Maybe gets rejected at 157, maybe comes back down and retests the 147 down to the 137, 138 zone before continuing the journey higher. And I think it can get to this linear scale 171.46. This is the 4.236, the big full extension on linear scale. So I think even though this 1.618 is looking like a good resistance zone, I think there is a super good possibility of just going up to the full extension 171.46, maybe even before any kind of a correction, before it might want to go back down to the 147 or 138 zone, right? I think it could just keep continuing higher and higher until it gets to this 171. So those are the zones I'll be watching, right? The first one is how it reacts at 157.62. If it can start to break above that, then I think it can go to the 171.46, maybe even next week or in the week after, right? But if it can't break above this 157.62 next week, then perhaps we will start to see some sort of correction, maybe even back down to that 147 or the 138, 137 zone before it wants to get to this linear scale 171.46. But either way, this chart is extremely bullish. I'm not sure which direction it's going to take, if it's going to blast through the 157 and go straight to 170, or if it's going to take its time, or if it wants to retrace first. But to me, it doesn't matter because the trend is your friend, and no matter what, this chart has always been super bullish, and there's no stopping it really, right? So the thing is, do you want to just risk trying to predict a short-term top? Or do you want the chart to tell you to say, hey, this is actually going to start a downtrend now? So the choice is yours. But for me, I think the momentum is still there. I think as long as all these indicators are holding as support, it can continue this journey at least to the 171.46 before any kind of major retrace. And next is Coinbase. And Coinbase here, we're going to talk about what happened last week. Well, first of all, Coinbase, it was the highest weekly candle close ever, and this is bullish, right? This is a super bullish development, and we can see here that the 429.54, it even wicked above and got into all-time high territory, but it got rejected. So does this rejection mean that it's not going to be able to continue to all-time highs just yet? Does it mean that it really needs to retrace, maybe even back to the 384.17? Well, let's talk about it, right? We can go take a look at some developments here. We're going to add on the Ichimoku just to see where those are. It's getting kind of extended, right? We can see that the conversion line is way down here at 340 for the weekly chart. We can go to the monthly chart too just to see where that is, and that's way down here at 290. So it's getting kind of extended on that. So could there be a pullback? Well, let's add some more indicators here, maybe even the Bollinger Bands, just to see what it looks like here. And yeah, they're expanding. The weekly Bollinger Bands are expanding, and actually it still is closing weekly candles above the upper band, and that upper band is 400 right now. And you know what? Ever since basically right here, June 16th, it did close above it. You can see the blue line right here. It closed above. Then that week of June 23rd closed above. Then the week of June 30th closed above. Last week closed above. And this current week, it closed above. So what is the trend? The trend is the upper Bollinger Band on the weekly chart is your support so far, right? That is your support, so, which is right now 400. So does it need to go back to 384 right now? Not necessarily. I think 400, well, next week is going to adjust maybe a little bit higher too. So we'll have to see when the candles open what the actual upper band is. But right now it's 400. So it's not a guarantee to come back down to the 380s or even into the 300s anymore, the 390s, because it might want to just maintain this upper band as a support. And if that happens, it'll keep expanding and it'll keep on the momentum to push it through into all-time highs and carry it on to the 500s and the 600s above. So let's watch that, right? That's going to be the main thing I'll be watching for next week, trying to maintain that momentum, trying to maintain the upper Bollinger Band as a support zone. And next I want to show my linear scale GAN here for Coinbase, and I wanted to show you that price did actually hit a resistance point on Friday, and that got up to the arc right there, which is in the 440s. That's why you saw a rejection at that point, and it wasn't random, it wasn't arbitrary, it just sold off. And that also means that there is still potential for the price to continue to the green level up here before any kind of major correction, which is around 462. So we can maybe see if we continue to follow this Bollinger Band right here at the 400, if that keeps on expanding, if price keeps pushing it up, if it keeps stabilizing on top of it as a support, then perhaps this linear scale GAN can keep going higher and higher, and price can go up closer to the 460s before any kind of major correction. And where would it correct to? Well, I mean, if it gets at the 460s, maybe it could even just stay within these arcs up here between the 440s and 460s and just consolidate for some time until it's really ready to go to the next levels in the 600s. So it's just becoming a very, very bullish chart. People that are expecting a big sell-off or a correction, it might not happen simply for the fact that it's being very explosive right now, and the Bollinger Bands are telling that story right here. So let's just pay attention to that. Like, if it starts to lose that, then we can start talking about the 384 again, but until then, ride the momentum, ride the wave, ride the momentum. And so far, the momentum of the Bollinger Band is telling us that it is support. The upper band is support, and if it's support, it can have a clear runway until at least the 460s before any kind of major sell-off. And next I want to show is OSCR, simply for the fact that a lot of people are talking about OSCR, and a lot of people are scared about it. There are a lot of people out there that think it's going to crash again, but I want to put things into perspective for you guys to show you what I'm really seeing with this chart. And what I saw the last few weeks, basically right up here back in June, I saw this 786. I saw it never made a higher high from back in September, and it's been a series of actually lower highs, like lower high, lower high, lower high, right? And because of that, it's still a resistance zone. Even though I was above this 786, it never made a higher high from these levels. So I think if it can't break higher, then the next thing to do is to go back and retest support. And since there was a lot of excitement here at resistance as usual, price just had to go back down to correct, to put things back into perspective, right? To put things back into a place where people are not so excited and actually depressed again. So we can see, where is price now? Well, if we just drew a line straight across here, what do we really see with this line? This line is, well, every time price gets in that vicinity, it's kind of a demand zone, right? It's kind of a demand zone. And we can see there was a little V bottom before right here, but that was just because it went down to retest the 618, right? It went down there, got some liquidity below the 618, and it bounced, it held. So now what we're going to look at is basically the monthly chart. And this monthly chart is something that I think is important, because whenever you get sad or depressed on the weekly chart or the daily chart or the 4-hour chart, use the high time frame to really decide what is going on. And when we see a chart like this on the monthly chart, you can see that there is a lot of support in this vicinity. You can see the baseline is right there. And there's still 12 days left into the end of the month. So it still has potential maybe to go a little bit lower first, but it has potential to still close above that baseline around 1425 and then even continue the journey higher. But not only that, look at this candle right here. This was November of 2024. Basically, that was 9 months ago. And you can see 9 months in a row, price has hit this exact price range, the 1340s. Every single month for the past 9 months has hit this range, like the 1350s, 1340s. It's hit this range. So that is the trend. The trend is really consolidating in this zone for a long time, building a foundation at a higher level, basically correcting through time, not really price, right? Since it broke out right here in November of 2023, it hasn't really had a big correction. It's just been between these two fibs, the 786 and the 618, right? The 786, the 618, these are the fibs that it's been stuck in between for really a long time, since February of 2024. So because of that, this is not a bearish chart. It's just consolidation. It's just waiting for price to build up enough energy until it's ready to go higher again. Does that mean it's not going to go lower? Well, it could. It could even retest the 618 if it wanted to, right? Go back down there and then just scare a lot of people. You can even see this green line developing down here. That's the 50-month moving average. Technically, it already touched it, so it's not guaranteed to go back down there, but it's still, I guess, is a possibility. But the fact is, this was a massive breakout before, and when you see massive breakouts, usually you get some consolidation for a while before continuing higher. So that's what we're experiencing right now. And that's why I always say be cautious at resistance, be more bullish at support. And right now, for the past 9 months, this has proven to us that this is a support zone. And so far, because of that proof, it looks like there's a good opportunity now for price to still stabilize in this zone or maybe a little bit lower before continuing the journey higher. So be bullish at support, guys, cautious at resistance. And the last chart I wanted to show you guys today is actually AMD, simply for the fact that it's been very, very explosive. And we can see this monthly candle is up 10%. Last month was up 28%. The month before that, 13%. And if you guys remember, I was on the morning show with Tracker all the time, and I was saying I was buying this zone. I was actually buying on the way down. Since like the 130s, I was buying on the way down. And even buying in the 90s, right? I was buying all the way down, and that paid off very, very handsomely right now, just dollar cost averaging, because this was slowly but surely a bottoming process. And sure enough, it went way, way down lower than ever thought, right? But this is sometimes necessary to be a lot more explosive. Sometimes you need that huge liquidity grab in order to have a slingshot out of there to get more bullish. And this monthly chart is really telling that story. Right, it was a perfect bounce right off the monthly cloud, right off almost the 100-month moving average, and basically a V-shaped recovery. And now we're getting back above the 618. This is orange line right here. This is the baseline on the monthly chart. That's around 152, and there's 12 days left. If it closes this month above the 618 and above the baseline, then the potential to even get to the 160s and 180s is there. Right, the 164 is the next resistance, then the 786 is the 180. This is going to be the necessary target to break to get to all-time highs, and maybe even some of the fib extensions above into the 300s. So it's a super bullish chart here, and I'm looking for a very nice monthly candle close here in a couple of weeks. And once we get that, if we get that, then we can start to build a base at a higher level and then just continue to go closer to the 200s and maybe even the 300s above. So something that was super scary before turned out to be a fantastic buying opportunity. And because of that, now we can reap the rewards into the 200s and 300s above. And what I really want to see the most now is just stability above the 149.90s for that potential to continue the journey higher.